Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon and lunchtime, everybody. Thank you for joining me on episode 46 of the show about the show. Happy 2019. I've been taking some time away dealing with some personal stuff, and I'm hoping to do the podcast going forward on a more regular basis for those of you who do enjoy listening to this. Happy Rusev Day to all of you wrestling fans out there. I know there's quite a few of you who listen to this that are wrestling fans, so happy Rusev Day. We are on the road to WrestleMania. It should be a good one this year. Today's episode 46, I am joined by Seth Stohs of Twins Daily. He is one of the co-authors of the Twins Prospects Handbook. He's a media member for the Twins, and he has a lot of knowledge about the prospects as well as the major leaguers. We're going to be talking Twinsfest from last weekend. We're going to delve deep into the payroll situation and if fans have the right to gripe about the lack of spending, as well as the 2019 season, Rocco Baldelli being the manager, and some spring training. So we're going to get into that here in a few minutes with Seth. I do want to make an announcement, though, first. I was at Twinsfest last weekend with Seth and about 10,000 other fans. And the Twins run, they do silent auctions as well as live auctions during their Twinsfest event. And I was able to win one of those auctions. I was very, very happy and thrilled to do so. It was an honor to be able to do that. It's one of those things where you don't really think it's ever going to happen until you actually do it. It's been a bucket list item for me. And when I say a bucket list item, I don't mean just a baseball bucket list item. It's been a bucket list item for me my entire life to be able to do. And I was informed later in the day on Sunday after the contest ended that I had won. And so my announcement is that at a game sometime this summer, to be determined, I will have the immense honor and pleasure of throwing out the first pitch at Target Field. So I am really, really looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun to be able to get out there and throw out the first pitch. And I get four tickets to the game and a couple other things. So that was pretty cool to find out that I had won. And when I find out which game I will be throwing out the pitch at, I will definitely post it on social media, and so everybody can kind of follow along with that. But so that's my big announcement. But for now, I'm going to bring on Seth Stohs. Enough about me. Let's get right into it with Seth Stohs from Twins Daily. Seth, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Devlin. How are you?
Doing well, man. Thanks. Glad to see you survived the polar vortex.
Well, I did, and then this morning I woke up and got out of my garage, or opened up my garage, and there's about 8-9 inches of snow, and just drove home and still not plowed out. So yeah, now there's even more. But I got into the garage and safe and ready to talk some Twins if you want to.
Oh, absolutely. Let's delve right in. So you are one of the co-authors of the Twins Prospects Handbook. Can you talk to me about kind of the process that goes into making the handbook and how the idea of the handbook came about?
Well, actually, this was the 11th this year. The first one, a reader at my old site, SethSpeaks.net, just asked me if there was any way to kind of monetize things. He said, you know so much about these prospects. You follow them every day. I wonder if there's a way you could, create something. And that's kind of what it was. And the first one I did within about 2 weeks. And now, it's just become so much bigger with the articles, with 160 profiles that are really pretty in depth. And it just got so big. And, Jeremy Nygaard and Cody Christie jumped on several years ago, and obviously Jeremy's gotten more busy with work and such, and Cody's still helping out, and Tom Froming, one of the new guys at Twins Daily too, helps out. So it's a busy thing, but it takes at least 2 months, maybe closer to 3. But we're pretty proud every year when it does finally come out.
How do you go from doing a prospect handbook that takes 2 weeks to 160 prospects? Like, when people buy this book, what can they expect to see on your average prospect? What information are you giving them?
Well, I look at that first book that I did, and it was just a little information, a paragraph or two on each player, and I knew more about some, but a lot of the guys playing in the Gulf Coast League, it basically said, so-and-so signed with the Twins out of the Dominican Republic in July of 2000, and last year he hit blah, 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 blah. I mean, that was about it. Now what we do is we provide all that bio information, who scouted them, how much they signed for, photographs of as many players as we can get, a lot of them from myself. But, guys like Steve Boer, who you've had on, I think, before, it's from Cedar Rapids, obviously helps with some of his pictures too, and I obviously appreciate that. But we're also looking at, their background and providing a couple of paragraphs on that, and their previous history of playing and what they did in more depth for the previous year. So last year, what did they do in 2018? And then, I write out a scouting report, and we try to predict where these guys will play in 2019 as well. And that's definitely a change. I think the first one was about 70 pages, and these most recent ones, even with trying to be more organized in them, they're still about 150 pages.
Yeah, it's definitely a labor of love. I follow all 3 of you guys, or all 4 of you guys on Twitter, and it's, you guys, it's relentless. It's never ending for you guys for about 3 or 4 months. It's a lot of long nights. Let's switch gears and talk Twinsfest. You and I were both down there. It was good to see you down there at Twinsfest. You were also down there for the Diamond Awards. Can you talk to people who may not be familiar with the Diamond Awards, what that event is?
Yeah, it's an event put on by the Twins, by the Minnesota, or the Twin Cities chapter of the Baseball Writers Association of America. I believe Pat Borzai is the head of that right now, and it's their Twins Awards. But they also work with the University of Minnesota, and specifically the Bob Allison Ataxia Research Center, and what they do for neurological diseases such as ataxia, such as Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, a variety of diseases, and the research they do for that. So, it's a fun night. It's kind of a black tie kind of thing, and or at least dress up type of thing, and kind of rub shoulders with people for a while. But the players that won the awards for the Twins last year were there. And, it's good to see Jose Barrios, and I talked a bit with Alex Kirilloff and Lewis Thorpe, and Max Kepler introduced his mom to me. She was there from Germany. She'd been around the States for about a month and was about to head back, but it was good to meet her. And just a variety of players, the media, fans. It was a good time.
Absolutely. And then the next 3 days were taken up by Twinsfest. For people who have never been to Twinsfest, obviously it's a bit different for you because you have media access. But for the average casual fan, what should fans expect from Twinsfest?
Well, you're probably better at answering that. I know when I went to the Metrodome, it was a lot of cards. It's a big card show. It's a big autograph session. I know that the Twins PR staff, led by Dustin Morris, but also Mitch Hested and Corey Frankenberg and Elvis Martinez, and they added some new people this year. They all do just a tremendous job, and it's amazing when you see it in action because they're just kind of running and keeping players going to the autograph show, autograph tables, working with the security to get them there. They're sending them off to play giant foosball or doing photo sessions or sending them off to a variety of different places around Target Field. So to coordinate that is just a huge thing, but it is a lot of fun. Last year I brought my daughter and spent the night just being just a fan there and letting her kind of experience it. And I know she loved it, rubbing shoulders with, guys like Brian Dozier or, Max Kepler said hi to her in the hallway and things like that. So, you kind of get up close. But also, as you get to see some of the things underneath the stadium, in the Champions Club and in the Legends area where, I don't get tickets. So, those areas that I wouldn't be able to go to during a game, you get to see too.
Let's switch over. Twinsfest was obviously last weekend. What were some, from the media side of things, they obviously announced the Twins Hall of Famers. It was Joe Nathan and remind me who the other, Jerry Bell, that was it. Joe Nathan and Jerry Bell. What are your thoughts on those two guys being inducted? Obviously, Nathan is the club's all-time saves leader, but what are your thoughts on him and Jerry Bell getting in?
No surprise in either case. Dave St. Peter kind of let off his comments that day with those announcements, and both of them were there. Joe Nathan was there. Jerry Bell was there. Jerry Bell, obviously, having been the longtime president of the Twins, largely responsible for what eventually became Target Field, the work done behind the scenes there, but also involved in those early teams and early successes too. Joe Nathan, like you said, I think he's the best reliever in Twins history. He got a lot of postseason, just a lot of saves, dominant numbers. I would put his numbers up against anyone from that same era other than Mariano Rivera. He's right there with everybody else. So very deserving. Absolutely. His first year on the ballot. So, the only thing that I find interesting is the year that Torrey Hunter finished playing, they put out a special ballot so that he could get elected basically that first year. You would think Joe Mauer would get that same thing, but at the same time, there had been a couple of years where there weren't a lot of strong candidates and things like that. So, now there are some real good candidates too, and I think more should be coming. But, that was the other thing. Joe Mauer was around and just so much going on there.
Not including Joe Mauer, who's one person that you think should be in the Twins Hall of Fame that currently isn't?
Oh, to me, the biggest oversight, I think, is Cesar Tovar. That's going back. He played before I think I was even born, but you not only look at what he did, he put up some solid numbers. He was such a important part of so many good teams in that 69-70 range. Kind of overshadowed by some of the bigger names, but he just provided a lot of value. Got some MVP votes, had some strong seasons. But there's other guys. A guy like even Corey Koski or Shane Mack, you look at some of their numbers compared to a lot of guys. Who am I thinking? Dave Goltz would be a good candidate. I'm not saying these are baseball Hall of Famers, but as you know, it's a different thing. So these guys had real strong careers.
Absolutely. I would even say, and as somebody who, the public can vote for it, and I will put this out there, that every single year I vote for Dan Gladden because I think Dan Gladden deserves to be in, not just for what he's done for Twins broadcasting, but as a player. He was kind of one of those glue guys on the 87 and 91 team. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the Herbacker and the Puckett or the Morris. But he was definitely a guy where they don't win those series without him playing in those World Series. So I think Dan Gladden definitely deserves to be in, and I hope someday he gets in.
Well, I'll fight you on that one as far as him deserving it as a player, but I will agree that his overall contributions to the Twins organization as a player with the World Series rings and now with his at least a decade, he's been in the Twins radio for probably 15 years now. I think the consolidation of all of that, and he probably should get in. And I won't really fight you because not really my nature.
Right. All right, Seth, let's switch over. Right, mine too. Let's switch over and talk about the new season that we have coming up. Pitchers and Catchers report in 10 days. It's almost here. Let's kind of go over briefly, real quickly, the current team that we're looking at. So the rotation that I'm looking at, probably going to be 1 through 5 of Berrios, Gibson, Odorizzi, Pineda, and then probably Martin Perez. When you look at that 1 through 5, you got to be pretty happy if you're the Twins with every spot except with the possibility of maybe number 5 and maybe a little bit of Pineda because you don't know what you're getting coming off of injury. But Berrios, Gibson, and Odorizzi, I mean, you got to be pretty excited about that if you're the Twins.
Yeah, I mean, with Berrios, you've got a guy who made his first All-Star appearance last year, and you hope he will at least compete for a spot in that for years to come. Kyle Gibson certainly seemed to turn a corner in his career about halfway through the 2017 season, and he was tremendous last year. I'd argue he was their most consistently good pitcher in 2018. And then you got question marks. Odorizzi ended the season strong. He's still fairly young, and obviously his key is getting into that third time through the order. Can he do that, or are they going to have to be creative with the bullpen for that? With Pineda, I mean, you're talking about a guy who throws 96, 97 for 4 or 5 innings. I'll take that any day. I mean, I think it's exciting. His arm's fine. He was ready to come back in September last year and pitched, and then he had the knee injury, which, of course, isn't related. So, I mean, the knee's fine. He's a big guy. I'm excited for him. I mean, Martin Perez is going to start the season as a 5th starter unless things just go horribly wrong in spring, which certainly could happen. The positive is you do have so much depth, and guys like Adalberto Mejia, Fernando Romero, Zach Littell, Steven Gonsalves, Louis Thorpe should factor in there this year. There's so many options there in that 5th spot, or for guys should Odorizzi or Perez or Pineda need kind of a piggyback type of an option. You've got guys that could go back and forth from AAA to the big leagues as needed. I know that's not ideal, but I'm not too terribly worried about the starting rotation.
Yeah, and I totally agree with everything you said, and that's not something the Twins have been able to say lately. I think the key guy in that rotation is Odorizzi. I really do. I think that if he can get through the 5th and 6th inning, like you said, the second or the late second and third part of the time through the lineup, if he can get through 6 innings under 100 pitches and give him a quality start, every 1 to 2 to 3 starts, the Twins are going to be okay. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Pineda brings. He had a 17 strikeout game on Mother's Day against the Orioles in 2017, so he's got stuff that plays, and it'll be interesting, like you said, with Perez, unless things go terribly wrong. And if he struggles, he's on a low money deal. They might be able to move Romero or Mejia or any of those guys you mentioned in. Do you think that the number 5 spot, Seth, is about the only spot in the order where the Twins, or in the rotation rather, where the Twins might consider using the opener in the primary?
I think so. But like I said, I think piggybacking may make some sense with Pineda early in the year. Let Pineda start and see whether he goes 3, 4, 5, depending on pitch counts and things like that. So I think that's part of it. Perez, I think, makes sense early to use kind of an opener type of thing, whether he's the opener and goes 2 or 3 innings, or they let someone like Mejia work the first 2 or 3 and then bring in Perez, or however they choose to do that. Cole Stewart's another option I've seemed to always forget, but he pitched well last year too. Yeah, I think that's really it.
Yeah, he absolutely did. Let's shift to the bullpen a little bit. We kind of touched on some of the names at that Perez conversation, but the bullpen kind of, as I see it now, is Trevor May, Taylor Rogers, Addison Reed, Blake Parker, Trevor Hildenberger, Fernando Romero, Matt McGill, and Adalberto Mejia, with Rogers and Mejia being the only lefties. Is Taylor Rogers maybe one of the more underrated bullpen arms in all of baseball? I mean, he was fantastic last year. He ended the season with a fantastic scoreless inning streak. Is he maybe one of the more underrated arms in all of baseball out of the bullpen?
I would say that his 2018 performance was probably underrated by most. especially nationally, just because he isn't a big name. And I mean, he was really good last year in 2017 through about July when he got used an awful lot again too. But
right.
I mean, he's pretty good. In order for him to get that, I mean, he's just going to have to continue to do that for a couple more years. He's a guy I would consider locking up long term. But, I mean, I agree with the rest of your list. The other nice thing is, along with Rogers and you mentioned Mejia, you've also got Gabriel Moya and Andrew Vasquez as lefties that potentially could work out of the pen, too, throughout the season. That's, I think, what Felby and Levine probably deserve more credit than they're getting for developing some of this depth. And I'm not saying they're the player development, but they've been part of that, and someone needs to get credit, whether it's Stu Clyburn, or Ivan Arteaga, who I saw now is in the Marlins organization as a pitching coach. But, someone deserves credit for building this depth and in the bullpen, in the rotation. So I don't know who people want to give that credit to, but someone should get that credit because there are going to be injuries in the rotation. There will be some in the bullpen. There will be disappointments in both cases, and to have that depth is a good thing.
One of the nice things that you mentioned about that depth is not only the depth of the number of arms they have, but also late game situations. I look at that list, and Blake Parker, Addison Reed, and I would say probably even maybe Trevor May all have some closing experience either with the Twins or with other teams in baseball. Right now, who do you see as the front runner to be the closer, or are they looking at closer by committee?
I mean, I guess I would add Taylor Rogers and Trevor Hildenberger both got opportunities in the 8th and 9th inning. And I think there's 5 guys right there that you've named that can all work in that role. I mean, in theory, I like the closer by committee philosophy. Make it make sense. To me, Trevor May is the best guy out of that bullpen in terms of potential and stuff and things like that. And I want him to pitch against the other team's best hitters. If you have a 1-run lead in the 8th inning and the other team's 2, 3, 4 hitters are coming in, I want Trevor May pitching in that situation. I don't want him to wait until the 9th inning just because he's the closer. If they have 3 left-handers coming up in the 9th inning, I want Taylor Rogers coming in. So I think, to me, it makes much more sense. And who knows, by the time people listen to this or download it, maybe Craig Kimbrell will be a Twin, and if he is, well, then we know he's going to be the closer.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll touch base on that here in a minute. One name that I'm kind of intrigues me in that bullpen, Seth, and I was really surprised kind of that they put him in the bullpen row, is Fernando Romero. I mean, he had a good first 15 innings as a major leaguer. His stuff plays. He's a 96 or so. Young guy, great arm, good stuff. Are you surprised that they put him in the bullpen and didn't put him in that number 5 spot? And if so, what does he bring out of the bullpen?
Well, I don't think they've moved him yet officially. I think that is likely to happen, especially depending on what happens. But he'll get a chance to be a 5th starter in the big leagues, and I would prefer that he get a chance or continue to get a chance to start. But at the same time, I mean, the reality of baseball is he's out of options after this year. So they do kind of need to, or they're being forced to, by the rules of the game, determine what his role is. And as a reliever, I mean, it's easy. He throws 96 to 99, and he's got a really good slider a lot of the time. And instead of trying to worry about whether or not he develops a third pitch, you just let him throw 2 and dominate people for an inning or 2 at a time. So that's the allure there.
Absolutely. Let's kind of touch base a little bit on a few other topics. I want to get your thoughts on who you think is going to be a regression candidate and who you think is going to be a breakout candidate. Give me one hitter and one pitcher for the Twins who are going to be breakout and regress.
Well, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately for the 2018 season, there's plenty of options for guys that should hopefully break out. I mean, as fans, I think we hope that Byron Buxton and Miguel Sano play much more like they did when they were healthy in 2017 than they did in 2018. And, just to throw a different name out there, because you only asked for one, I'm going to give you 3. I think Jonathan Scopson, the same thing. He was incredible in 2017 and really for a couple of years before that. And I think he's a guy that had a tough year and an injury last year like Buxton and never really got going. So I think he's another candidate. As far as regression, I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, again, Max Kepler is a guy who I think we all think can take a step forward. So right now I don't think anyone really busted out enough last year. Last year it was easy to say Eddie Rosario would regress because of his wild approach at the plate. But I do think that even though he swings outside the zone a lot, he does have a good sense of where he can barrel the ball, where the pitches are for him to barrel the ball. And to me, that's more important even than knowing the strike zone. And he hits the ball hard.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's a candidate, but at the same time, I think he kind of has figured out, and I think he's matured, and I think he's kind of become what he gives, which is pretty good. From a starting standpoint, from a pitching standpoint, I hate to think of who could regress, but I do think if healthy, Addison Reed has been really good for 8-9 years in the big leagues, and I think that if he's healthy, he can really help the bullpen. And hopefully they've got, again, enough depth of quality arms, and I think they have that in Reed and Rogers and Hildenberger and May and, even McGill, I think, has a good arm. And if you add Fernando Romero and Adalberto Mejia to that, you've got a lot of guys that are pretty good. So you hopefully don't have to use them every time you have a lead. So I think Addison Reed is one to watch, too, in 2019.
One of the common things that you and I both see on Twitter is a lot of fans saying, well, Bryce Harper's out there, Craig Kimbrell's out there, Manny Machado's out there, Dallas Keuchel's out there, and the Twins have $30 million to spend and they're being cheap. To me, that narrative is just wrong. I'm more one of those people that I want them to spend money, but to me, it's more how they spend it than just spending it for the sake of spending, and that's why I think all of the signings that they've done this year have been really, really smart and good signings. What do you say to fans who say the Pohlads or the organization or the front office or ownership is cheap because they aren't giving out, a $15 to $20 million a year contract, when those same fans were complaining that Mauer was getting paid $23 million a year?
Well, I mean, there's two sides of it. I mean, it's not like the Twins are spending like crazy. So, I mean, it's not like they're completely wrong. And the fact that they were at 130 last year with Mauer in there, and now they're at about 100 this upcoming season as of right now, I mean, that's a big drop. And people are okay. I mean, it's okay for people to be disappointed. I'm choosing not to be disappointed just because, one, I've expressed my opinion that $100 million is certainly lower than it should be relative to revenues. But I agree that it's more about how it's spent than that it's spent. And also, I just am not one to dwell on things. I don't like bringing it up every day the way a lot of people do. And I think,
Sure.
That's kind of just, it is what it is at this point. The other side of that is, what if they do sign Kimbrell and they give him a 2-year, $38 million deal? I mean, suddenly now you're at 120, which some people are still going to be disappointed in. But I don't want to sit there and be like, well, they're not doing anything. They're not trying. They're not doing this. Well, they signed Nelson Cruz. They signed Jonathan Scope. And then if they sign one more and it happens to be someone like that, that's a pretty good offseason. You've added 3 hitters to your lineup, a starter who none of us like at this point, and a couple of solid relievers. I mean, that's a pretty good offseason. So I understand the disappointment and the frustration, and the Twins they've signed guys to $12, $13, $14 million deals. Those are not cheap deals. They signed a guy to a $23 million deal, like you said, that, fans eventually didn't like that either. So I don't know, why suddenly those same people want teams to be spending $300 million over 10 years on a player, even if it's guys as good as Machado or Harper. So it's a tough situation, and, I think as long as they're making baseball decisions that are well thought out, well reasoned, and make sense, I'm on board.
I agree with you completely. And to wrap up the payroll part of this, and this episode, I would just say to those fans who are upset that the Twins aren't spending more money, the Twins spent a record $130 million last year and won 78 games. So it's like Seth and I said, it's not so much about how much you spend, it's how you spend it. You know, if the Twins spend $130 million again this year and only win 70 or 80 games, fans are going to say, well, you know, they're still upset because they signed the wrong guys and whatnot. So, Seth, I really appreciate
I'd add to that, Devlin.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just add to that. There was an interesting article that was posted at Twins Daily in our Super Blog Sunday that Tom Froming set up for the second straight year, where we had a new article every hour from, I think, 8 until 5 yesterday. One of those articles was on a study looking at which team spent the most in the previous 6 or 7 off seasons, and then what their plus minus in terms of wins was for that next season. And there's really, I mean, some teams go up, some teams go down, and some teams stay the same, even those top spenders. Of course, there's other studies that show that spending big money obviously is matters more over time, because those big contracts are multi-year deals. So you have to look at more than 1 year. I always say I'm not against. I mean, if they go and sign Kimbrel, I'll be like, great. If they don't get him, I think this is still a team that can compete for the playoffs.
Yes or no? Do the 2019 Minnesota Twins make the playoffs?
I mean, it's not even spring training, so there's no reason to believe that they can't. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look at the other teams. I mean, it comes back to the Yankees and the Red Sox are going to get in. The Astros are going to get in. And, you know, can the Twins catch Cleveland? I would say they can, especially if Cleveland ends up still trading a guy like Kluber. But even if not, then they're competing with 2 or 3 teams like the Rays, the Mariners, maybe the Angels for one spot. So it's really hard to predict. But I think they can win 86, 87 games, even if they don't make a move.
I agree. For the record, I predicted the Twins win 92 games. So that's where I stand on that. Seth, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show, giving me a half an hour out of your day and talking some Twins baseball. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you a lot.
Of course, Devlin, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.